video is brought to you by the brand new XREAL Pro spatial screen glasses. I took them with me when I visited the Back Pocket podcast last week, and their reactions were just about what I expected.
Oh my god, I'm in the video game.
Click below to grab a pair for yourself, or if you're in the US, you can take advantage of a special offer that lets you trade in literally any other pair of glasses for a discount. More details after the video. Gamers, another week, this week in video games. Always glad to have you back, so thanks for stopping by. Big week this week, actually. Who'd have thought that a Bioshock game would ever suffer from a troubled development? That's never happened before. That Battlefield 6 reveal went over really well, and the FPS podcast even got the chance to sit down with Vince Zampella and Byron Bede, the two head honchos for the franchise. Meanwhile, Nintendo is jacking the price of the old Switch in the US? What? I was told that companies are just going to eat the tariffs and make less profit. I don't know what to believe anymore. Before that though, let's check in on the current state of Bioshock 4. Now listen, you might not even remember that a Bioshock 4 was coming, and you'd be forgiven for forgetting that, because this game has been in development since 2014, and 11 years later, the game has not yet been officially revealed, and we know absolutely nothing about it except what is leaked or revealed by reporters. Reporters like Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, who this week filed a report that suggests that, wouldn't you know it, the game that's been in development for 11 years without so much as a reveal, it's not going so well. This week, Schreier reported that the next Bioshock game, which is being developed by Cloud Chamber, failed its most recent internal review milestone, with 2K executives expressing concern over its current state. Schreier wrote of his discussions with sources, quote, "The game's narrative was identified as an area that was particularly in need of improvement and will be revamped over the coming months," the people said, end quote. Narrative is a pretty big deal in a Bioshock game. This is a series that delivered some very compelling settings, characters, and narrative set pieces, exploring a variety of themes that many other games were unwilling to touch. It also delivered some great narrative twists, some of the most memorable in gaming, in fact. And so the bar for Cloud Chamber is pretty high, but if there's one aspect of Bioshock you really need to nail, it's the narrative. As a result, 2K have made some changes at Cloud Chamber, and it looks as though they're about to make more. In the immediate, Cloud Chamber founder and studio boss Kelly Gilmore has been, quote, ousted, end quote. Gilmore had previously worked at Firaxis for some 18 years before founding Cloud Chamber, so this marks the end of a very, very long career with 2K Studios. In addition, the game's creative director, Hogarth de la Plante, has been moved out of that position and into a publishing role. On LinkedIn, he lists his current position as Franchise Creative Director, beginning June 2025. Rather ominously, in a town hall meeting, Cloud Chamber staff were told that the company needs to become more agile and efficient, which has led staff to worry that layoffs may soon be announced, but there is no confirmation of that at this point. 2K were willing to confirm that these leadership changes have happened, and they were uncharacteristically forthright about the reasons. In a statement to Bloomberg, they said, quote, "Right now, we have a good game, but we are committed to delivering a great one. We are working closely with leadership at the studio to define this path," end quote. So yeah, it doesn't look like the next Bioshock game is coming anytime soon. Kind of looks like we're going to get Ken Levine's Judas before we get Bioshock 4, and that was definitely not the plan when all of this was set in motion 11 years ago. I'll tell you what we are getting soon though, a new Battlefield game. This week EA pulled back the curtain on Battlefield 6, the follow-up to the worst Battlefield of all time, Battlefield 2042. EA announced some time ago that they weren't making any further updates to 2042 so they could swing all of their weight in behind the next entry. This was the moment that FPS luminary Vince Zampella was appointed to lead the franchise. He is of course one of the fathers of Call of Duty and Titanfall and Apex Legends. So since there's basically only two other large-scale multiplayer shooters he hasn't led during his career, I guess it only makes sense for him to try his hand at this one for a while. I half expect Gabe to announce Zampella as the boss of Counter-Strike at some point in the future, but that day is not today. Today, it's Battlefield, and in speaking to the Friends Per Second podcast, Zampella revealed his biggest inspirations for the latest entry.
You know, being the spiritual successor to 3 and 4 is kind of how we look at it. And like, so taking all that and what would that next spiritual successor kind of look like? And that's the, like, where we started.
Obviously, this makes a lot of sense since Battlefield Hardline was more cops and robbers than large-scale war, and 2042 was, well, 2042. Battlefield 1 was a high watermark for the series, but that was a World War I setting. If you're going to shoot for a modern Battlefield, 3 and 4 are fondly remembered. Well, 4 is a little complicated since its launch date was pretty diabolical, but it did come good in the end. Lucy and Jake did also ask Zampella about that Ars Technica report that alleged that internally there was a goal of 100 million players for Battlefield 6, a truly astronomical figure given that previous entries have struggled to break 30 million players. Zampella declined to comment, saying they don't respond to leaks, but he did say that EA is feeling pretty confident that the game is going to pull players away from other games offering a similar experience. Surely a big drawcard is the game's Portal mode, which makes its return in Battlefield 6 in a big way. This time it's supported by much more sophisticated level making tools, so rather than being something quite closed form and prescriptive, it's actually going to give modders a huge amount of freedom to design custom experiences. User-generated content is massive business, and you only need to look at stuff like GTA, Fortnite, or Roblox to see that, so EA investing in this side of Battlefield makes a lot of sense if they truly hope to reach that reported 100 million player target. Outside of that, we saw the reveal of your standard multiplayer modes, but so far EA are remaining tight-lipped about the possibility of a battle royale. And look, it has been teased, it's definitely happening, it's just that EA don't want to talk about it just yet. Fair enough, it's widely thought that that game mode will be free to play, but that is speculation at this point, given the fact that Battlefield is confirmed to be a boxed product retailing for at least $70 US. For me personally, I haven't played it yet, but so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing. This looks like it's in way better shape than 2042 was pre-launch, and this still has another 4 months to go in terms of development. Of course, the most important thing is server performance, and we have no idea how that's going to go yet, so I'm not getting too excited just yet. I'd also echo a lot of the community sentiment that it's really disappointing that the main game modes won't have a server browser. Server browser will be an option for Portal games, but the traditional multiplayer modes will be accessible by matchmaking only. This straight up sucks, to be honest. Battlefield is a game that is at its best when communities can host and maintain servers, or where you can select the best combination of player count, ping, and map that suits you. Really hoping that EA can reverse this decision and bring server browsing back, since it's kind of the only thing people are really asking for at this point, and I think it's a fair ask. You know what's unfair? Price hikes on video game stuff, but that's exactly what's been happening in this modern era. It used to be that when a new console came out, that was the most expensive it was ever going to be, and we could expect handsome discounts throughout the life of that device. Not anymore. Now these things seem to appreciate like classic cars. Someone check that Bungie CEO shopping cart, make sure he's not buying up all the excess supply. Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo have all affected price increases on their hardware since the pandemic era, where supply chains were thrown into chaos and inflation went out of control. More recently, uncertainty around US tariffs has prompted further price increases in various territories as platform holders look to offset tariff-related losses by raising prices in territories unaffected by tariffs. Territories like Australia. Thanks for that, by the way, appreciate it. Just this past week, Nintendo announced a very peculiar set of price increases. The price of almost all of their hardware went up between 10 and 15%, with the one exception being the very thing you'd expect to go up the most, the Switch 2. The Switch 1 is getting a price increase of roughly 12%, but the Switch 2's price will remain exactly the same. At this point, a Switch 1 OLED will sell for $400 US, while a Switch 2 will sell for $449. Now, other than people interested in, sideloading and emulation, who on earth is not going to spend that extra $50 to just get a Switch 2? I'd wager not many people, so I do wonder if Nintendo are just looking to sell their remaining inventory at a premium to collectors, emulators, high-end resellers, that sort of thing. In justifying the price increase, Nintendo pointed to, quote, market conditions, end quote, and this price bump naturally begs the question though, is a Switch 2 price increase on the horizon? Hard to imagine there isn't, given that US tariff policy is resulting in price increases and inflation. Despite what Epstein's best buddy says, tariffs are not carried by corporations. They are passed on to consumers, and there's only so long that companies will put off those increases before they eventually do what they gotta do to protect their profit margins. This is especially true for products that don't have a lot of competition, and given you can't play Nintendo games anywhere else, Nintendo has a lot of flexibility to increase prices without worrying that they'll lose market share to a cheaper, locally made competitor. Speaking of Switch 2 sales, Nintendo just did an earnings call where they confirmed that the Switch 2 sold through 6 million units in its first 7 weeks on sale, which does indeed make it the fastest selling console of all time. Mario Kart World sold through 5.63 million units during the same period, indicating that basically everyone who bought a Switch 2 also bought Mario Kart, as to be expected. Interestingly though, they revealed that total software sales, including Mario Kart World bundled with hardware, totaled just 8.67 million units, which means that only roughly 3 million non-Mario Kart World games were sold during that period. That figure is low, and it does line up with anecdotal reporting from third-party publishers who commented anonymously that their sales were much lower than expected. It really does seem like people just weren't picking up third-party releases, which is unusual for a console launch, since third-party software often makes up the backbone of a new console software sales. Another interesting note, nearly 60% of all games purchased were digital, and that figure does not include the bundled Mario Kart World sales. This indicates that even Nintendo's fanbase is embracing a digital future, and honestly, who can blame them when things like game keycards are essentially just a digital release with extra annoying steps? God bless CD Projekt Red for sticking to their guns and insisting that the entirety of Cyberpunk 2077 should fit on the game cartridge, something that very nearly didn't happen were it not for a passionate member of the CD Projekt Red dev team. If you want the full story behind that, it's part of our exclusive interview with CD Projekt Red's head of technology, which we have up over on the website. I'll leave a link to that below the like button. One last bit of Switch 2 news. Nintendo hosted a partner direct last week, which was a bit of a bust, to be honest. There were a few interesting announcements here, like Monster Hunter Stories 3, Dragon Ball, Sparking Zero, Final Fantasy Tactics, Star Wars Outlaws, and Chronos The New Dawn. But if you are hoping for interesting third-party Switch 2 exclusives, there weren't many of them to be found. Surely that's partly to do with the increasingly multi-platform paradigm the whole industry is operating in, but the Switch has always had its own little corner of third-party exclusives to call its own, and so far that doesn't seem to be the case with the Switch 2. Alright, let's change tack now and check in with this censorship bullshit that started to plague storefronts as payment platforms bend the knee to puritanical conservative activist groups. This all started some weeks back when Valve started to delist a number of adult games citing pressure from payment platforms. Turns out that they were on the receiving end of a pressure campaign initiated by one Collective Shout, an Australian-based activist group with a long history of enacting pressure campaigns to censor films, music, and movies that they find objectionable. Not every campaign they've run has been successful, but this one worked a treat, and while it was largely focused on games that depict sexual violence, it was never going to stop at just that. A number of other adult games were caught up in the Steam delisting, and the problem became even more widespread when itch.io announced it was de-indexing all of their not safe for work games while it conducted an audit. They too cited pressure from payment platforms, and their de-indexing immediately disadvantaged thousands of game makers whose games had done nothing wrong, they were just unlucky enough to be caught in the crossfire of this payment platform-led censorship. Recently, MasterCard put out a statement in response to all of this, and their intent was to distance themselves from all of these delistings. Here's what they had to say, quote, "MasterCard has not evaluated any game or required restrictions of any activity on game creator sites and platforms, contrary to media reports and allegations. Our platform network follows standards based on the rule of law. Put simply, we allow all lawful purchases on our network. At the same time, we require merchants to have appropriate controls to ensure MasterCard cards cannot be used for unlawful purchases, including illegal adult content," end quote. So that's basically them saying, not us, to which Valve responds, yeah it was. In a statement to Kotaku, Valve said this, quote, "MasterCard did not communicate with Valve directly despite our request to do so. MasterCard communicated with payment processors and their acquiring banks. Payment processors communicated this with Valve, and we replied by outlining Steam's policy since 2018 of attempting to distribute games that are legal for distribution. Payment processors rejected this and specifically cited MasterCard's Rule 5.12.7 and risk to the MasterCard brand. Rule 5.12.7 states a merchant must not submit to its acquirer and a customer must not submit to the interchange system any transaction that is illegal or in the sole discretion of the company may damage the goodwill of the corporation or reflect negatively on the marks," end quote. So there it is in black and white. MasterCard has rules relating to their goodwill. Payment intermediaries want to abide by those rules as they interpret them, and so they compel storefronts like Steam and itch to take down games. I know all of this is a little dry and dense, but to be honest, it's extremely important because today it's games depicting sexual violence and tomorrow it's games depicting sex or violence. There's no way that these activist groups are going to stop at just these games, and no way that these payment platforms are going to push back against this stuff because it's easier for them to just capitulate. One platform is taking a strong stand against all of this though, Good Old Games. They recently put up a domain titled freedomtobuygames.org, which reads, quote, "Censorship is quietly deciding which games you can buy. We are fighting back. Some games vanish, not because they broke the law, but because someone decided they shouldn't exist," end quote. They followed this up by giving away a variety of ultra-violent and not safe for work adult games, and in 24 hours, 1 million people turned up to claim those free titles. Obviously, most of those people were just happy to be getting some free stuff, but now 1 million more people are aware of this issue, and awareness is everything in this sort of battle. That's why I've covered this topic every week for the last 3 weeks and will continue to do so. If MasterCard is feeling pressure enough to issue a response, then surely they're fielding more calls and emails than they'd like, and hopefully that gives them pause the next time a pressure group rolls around demanding some concessions. Hey, are you enjoying this show? If so, consider supporting what we do by signing up over at thisweekinvideogames.com. It's got all the goodness of the show without my annoying voice. Articles, features, reviews, deep dives, interviews, and more. All of it is 100% ad-free, no AI written articles, no SEO garbage, no clickbait, just straight up games coverage. Plus, you get an ad-free version of this very show if you're into that sort of thing. Visit thisweekinvideogames.com and sign up to become a founder, which locks in your subscription price forever. That offer is only running for a limited time, so get in quick. And now, on with the rest of the show. A quick lightning round to finish off. Meta, aka Facebook, just declared a $4.5 billion loss from their Meta Labs reality business. That's a lot of money to lose in a single year. Oh wait, that's the amount of money they lost in a single quarter. And they've been losing about the same amount of money every quarter for the last 10 quarters in a row. They did make some money from their Ray-Ban partnership, but yeah, with overall interest in VR taking a big nosedive this past 18 months, I don't see how Zuck turns this around anytime soon. We're far more likely to be dating actual ChatGPT robots than we are living inside of virtual worlds at this point, but both visions of the future are equally chilling. Krafton CFO Dong Kyun Bae responded to an investor query about the Subnautica 2 drama. The investor suggested that Krafton weren't properly managing their projects. but the CFO disagreed, responding, quote, "Because there's talk of legal proceedings of Subnautica 2 and it being delayed, that could make you think that within Krafton our milestone process is being mismanaged. There's a bit of, I believe, a reasoning leap or reasoning gap between those 2 points. Actions that we've taken on Subnautica 2 actually represent that things are effectively being managed inside of Krafton when it comes to milestone management," end quote. In other words, he thinks this present situation is because Krafton are on top of things and are willing to take action where necessary. Given the fact that Subnautica 2 is already significantly behind schedule, it's likely that the truth is somewhere in the middle. Bloober Team's The Medium is getting a film adaptation courtesy of Gary Dolberman's production studio. They previously worked on Until Dawn, It, and Annabelle. I'm not sure how much interest there might be in a The Medium movie, given the game wasn't exactly a breakout success, but hey, it feels like every single video game that sells more than 12 copies is being optioned for movies right now. So why should this be any different? Nintendo still sucks when it comes to live events. Japan's biggest speedrunning event is called RTA, and they were served a warning by Nintendo for unauthorized usage of their games in speedrunning competitions. As a result, that event will not be hosting any events featuring Nintendo games, and who can blame them? It's not their fault. It's literally just a community event that's harmless fun, but Nintendo are so desperate to control the way their IP is used that they won't let it go through. A real shame, and honestly, it's just Nintendo giving away free marketing and burning goodwill with no upside whatsoever. Speaking of which, Microsoft, they're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Rare Studios by releasing a custom controller, but get this, it's not even an official Microsoft-made controller, it's a third-party partnership. No shade to the manufacturer since it actually looks like a pretty good controller, but pretty much the only thing that Microsoft has been able to successfully ship over the past 2 console generations is different colored controllers. So it's at least a little bit funny that they decided to outsource this one. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, a couple of things happened this past week, and the first was that THQ Nordic held its little showcase of upcoming games, and there were a few notable things worth mentioning here. We'll start with the biggest one, Darksiders 4. Hell yeah, this one is the third-person action-adventure series that revolves around an altered interpretation of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and it's been lying dormant since before the pandemic. The first one had you playing as War, the second as Death, the third as Fury, and the fourth will seemingly let you play as all 4, including the new one, Strife. Remnant developer Gunfire Games is handling this one like they did the surprisingly controversial Darksiders 3. No date for this one just yet. THQ loves them some Destruction Derby, and they're keeping at it with the announcement of Wreck Nation, a kind of side game to Bugbear's destructive driving game Wreckfest. They're not handling this one, however, since they're working on the Wreckfest 2 early access release. A developer called 3 Fields which was formed by former Criterion developers, you know, the Burnout people. They made a few Burnout-like games called Danger Zone and Dangerous Driving, which were just okay, but THQ wanted to see what they could do with a bigger budget. Wreck Nation seems to have a big emphasis on its open world, which you can customize with ramps and obstacles and that sort of thing, kind of like Burnout meets Trackmania. No date for this one yet, but it is slated for PCs and consoles. THQ also love them some SpongeBob SquarePants, and after releasing the Bikini Bottom remaster, they've now got a fresh platformer slated for later this year titled Titans of the Tide, which is hitting PCs and consoles on November 18th. Also, they put David Hasselhoff in this trailer, which is a nice bit of weaponized nostalgia. Love that. Reanimal also showed up in this showcase, bringing with it a release window of Q1 next year. This is the new cinematic horror platformer from Tarsier Studio, the folks who made Little Nightmares 1 and 2. This one looks way more messed up than those earlier games, and I'm super into it. PC and consoles for this one. The Gothic remake also showed up again. You ever play that one? It's a Euro CRPG from the turn of the 21st century, developed by a studio called Piranha Bytes. These guys got embraced, aka acquired, and then embraced again, aka shut down. But the IP still lives with Embracer through THQ Nordic, so Gothic remake time, everybody. It now has an early 2026 release window, and there's a prologue demo on Steam right now. They're also releasing the original trilogy onto consoles sometime in 2026. Here's a new one. It's a first-person narrative RPG called Fatekeeper, developed by the studio that did Spellforce 3 and Titan Quest 2, which just released into early access. Fatekeeper is also gunning for an early access release sometime this winter in Northern Hemisphere speak. Hey, if Baldur's Gate can do it, why not other RPGs too, right? Seems to have a big focus on swordplay and spells, but hard to tell what else is going on at this stage. It looks nice though. Speaking of looking nice, the other thing that happened this week was EVO, the iconic annual fighting game tournament that takes place in Vegas, now owned by PlayStation. EVO that is, not Vegas. Perfect place to do some PlayStation product placement then, and that was a lot of P's in one sentence. They displayed their upcoming first-party arcade stick, which is now called Flex Strike, which Ed tells me is looking quite promising, although no one at EVO was actually allowed to touch it to get a feel for it. And they also announced a closed beta for Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls in September. That's their exclusive Marvel tag fighting game developed by Arc System Works of Guilty Gear and Dragon Ball FighterZ fame. Sega also came to EVO bearing some goodies, including the first gameplay trailer for the next Virtua Fighter game made by the Like a Dragon devs, which is looking very good, as well as announcing that Virtua Fighter 5 Revo, the online-focused remaster of the almost 20-year-old game, is getting a big update with a new single-player mode, and it's coming to PlayStation and Xbox on October 30th, Switch 2 sometime later. And while we're on Japanese games, we'll end with Hotel Barcelona, the new one from Swery65 and Suda51, two kings of making janky games with tons of character. This is a roguelike 2D combat game set in small-town America, hence the weird characters, I guess. Each run creates a ghost echo that helps you out on the next one, and each biome is a different subgenre of horror. There's also Dark Souls invasions going on. There's a lot happening here. Anyway, it's now got a release date of September 26th this year for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. Alright, so what came out last week? Well, let's kick off with Dead Take, which is the new one from Surgeon Studios, makers of last year's EA original Tales of Kenzara Zao. This one is very different though. It's a first-person psychological horror game about the perils of trying to make it in Hollywood, featuring puzzles and live-action footage featuring a bunch of notable video game actors in the flesh, well, as much as they can be in a video game, I guess. This one's sitting at a strong 80 on OpenCritic, with critics unanimously praising the performances from the cast, with names like Ben Starr and Neil Newbon in leading roles. GameSpot gave it an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "Though it's a fictional story, developer Surgeon Studios describes Dead Take as a reactionary experience to real-world events, rumors, and practices in the film and video games industry. And I believe that. The performances in the FMV recordings feel so personal, so real, that I have to believe that many of the actors were influenced by lived experience or stories told to them as first-hand accounts," end quote. Austin also took a look at this one for a written review up on the website. You can read it right now for free at thisweekofvideogames.com. And while he had nothing but praise for the performances, those more pedestrian horror elements and the issues with the puzzle loop soured the game a lot for him more than others. Here's some of what he wrote. Quote, "For the most part, Dead Take offers a rather obvious linear series of puzzles that require little experimentation or investigation to overcome, often making this feel like a simple scavenger hunt rather than a head-scratching puzzle box. I get the sense Dead Take was a fun passion project, a virtual escape room built by friends who just so happened to be some of the industry's leading actors and wanted to speak out to say something about the harsh realities of their work. To some degree, they succeeded in doing so. While the story hasn't stuck with me in the way I'd hoped, the performances from Starr and Newbon are powerful enough that the message is understood loud and clear," end quote. If you want to read more of that one, I'll leave a link to it below the like button. Sticking with horror of a more retro flavor now, the PS1-inspired Heartworm also came out last week. This one has landed pretty well for itself on Steam with a very positive user sentiment at the time of writing, with about 136 reviews so far. Here's Steam user Jabotabs, who put in about 11 hours, quote, "However you slice it, Heartworm's creators have done their homework. This game nods to Resident Evil 1, Silent Hill 1, etc. And while it's picked up some of the best parts of these PS1 classics, the team has made Heartworm wholly its own thing. It improves upon and leaves its own mark on the survival horror genre, standing strong on its own 2 feet. With a captivating story, lovable characters, and environmental storytelling, along with exciting gameplay and suitable scares, I really enjoyed my time with the game. It also retains the emphasis on resource management and exploration that's key to great survival horror titles," end quote. Moving on to Dear Me, I Was, which was that very short Switch 2 visual novel from Arc Systems Works. Not many reviews for this one, sadly, but enough for an OpenCritic rating, which is currently sitting at a strong 77. Nintendo Life gave it 8 out of 10, flagging that it went for roughly an hour, and said this, quote, "It's a simple, grounded story devoid of the major twists or melodrama one might expect from this genre, but that's entirely by design. The woman's life is one that the average player can likely relate to on some level, and that makes her struggles, discoveries, and experiences all the more resonant. I was genuinely caught off guard by how hard some of the emotional moments hit me, in spite of the game's abbreviated length. The story tackles themes of loss and self-doubt with an impressive degree of realism and restraint, which makes its heavier beats feel earned rather than coming off as cheap tearjerker attempts," end quote. Of course, the perfect cure to wash away those tears is blood-soaked rage, and that's where Ninja Gaiden Ragebound comes in. But this one is a modern retro take developed by blasphemous devs The Game Kitchen. It's sitting comfortably at a mighty 87 on OpenCritic, with IGN scoring at 9 out of 10. Here's what they had to say, quote, "Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is a game I'm going to be replaying for a long time. It looks and sounds incredible, and the fast but thoughtful combat is so damn satisfying that I had a hard time putting it down long enough to write this review. Juggling different types of attacks and powerful abilities as I break auras, time hypercharges against intimidating foes, and bounce off demons' head is a blast that is challenging and rewarding in equal measure. It just feels right," end quote. And coming back to the quaint humdrum of everyday life once more, let's take a look at Time Flies, which was our radar pick from last week. This one had a lot of fans, it seems, and it's landed at a strong 78 on OpenCritic, with lots of folks touching on its environmental gags and thought-provoking meta commentary on how short life is. Here's Polygon's take, which is unscored, but it had a very positive spin. Quote, "You can see it as a nihilistic game about how we're all going to be snapped out of existence one day no matter what we do. If the light bulbs don't get us, the old age will. We're all flies hopelessly trying to buzz louder than a grandfather clock's hourly chime. But I see something more optimistic amid the heap of slapstick insect deaths. Time Flies is about being undeterred by life's limitations. It's about setting existential despair aside and experiencing as much as you can, leaving no bucket list item unchecked. It's about life, not death," end quote. That seems like a nice sentiment to end on, I think. So what's coming out this week? Well, back to talking about death, specifically the undead in the House of the Dead 2 remake, which comes out on PC and Switch on Thursday, August 7th. Look, these Lycan games are never going to be as good as they were without a CRT television and big plastic pistols, but hey, they won't stop Polish publisher Forever Entertainment from licensing old Japanese IP and remaking it for whatever reason. Joining on Thursday is another re-release of a classic game, or classic games, I should say. Gradius Origins collects 18 different versions of 7 different entries in Konami's retro shoot-'em-up series, including an all-new one made especially for this collection, Salamander 3. Not much to say here. If you're into this genre, you're probably all over this one already. It's coming out on all platforms. Now, some of those games are pretty old, but you know what's really old? The Old Country. That's right, Mafia Old Country. This one's probably the biggest release this week. The latest entry in 2K's hit-or-miss crime action series that still manages to do alright for itself, because if there's one thing gamers love, it's doing crimes. This one is set in Sicily at the turn of the 20th century, and it explores the origins of the Mafia, and yeah, I don't know how this one's gonna go. They didn't do any hands-on previews for it except one with IGN. We requested a review copy for it, but we're told there was limited allocation and that we didn't make the cut. I've also heard from a number of other reviewers that they didn't get review codes either, and I just read Digital Foundry's weekly newsletter and they confirmed that they didn't get a code either. Very unusual, to be honest, and it does make me wonder why they're being so cagey. I guess we'll all find out together when it launches tomorrow. Jumping over to next week now, and on Tuesday, August 12th, Ninja Theory are heading back to their old country, the PlayStation. After Sony bankrolled Heavenly Sword back on the PS3 days and saved the studio, they ended up being scooped up by Microsoft a few years back. A lot has changed at Xbox since then, of course, and now they're bringing Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 to PS5. If you're looking for something completely different, then check out Rah Rah Boom, a cheerleader-themed co-op beat-em-up out on August 12th. It's got 4-player co-op and a few neat ideas, like a lane-based level structure instead of more free-form movement, which ties into the fact that you can swap from beat-em-up to shoot-em-up on a whim with each character, giving it that extra dimension. And finally, this one seems suitable to leave until the end. It's called Echoes of the End, and it was not on our radar until we started trawling the depths of Steam for new releases. It's a AA game being published by Deep Silver and developed by a 40-person studio from Iceland called Mirkur. Third-person action game that kind of feels like it's aiming for a hybrid of Witcher-like combat in a Santa Monica-style God of War narrative adventure. Could be interesting. We'll keep an eye on it for next week. PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles for this one. Here's a game coming out next week that is definitely on our radar, so put this on your radar. This is I actually have no idea if I'm pronouncing this correctly, or even if it has a correct pronunciation, because I'm pretty sure the name of this game is what it is because it looks like the characters in it. This one comes from a solo indie developer from Japan called Nama Takahashi, whose style of game creation is to go super deep on one idea. He comes up with one cool game mechanic and explores it thoroughly, creating several interesting, challenging situations to use that mechanic, keeping you on your toes and pleasantly surprised the whole way through. Like, remember how The Witness made simple maze puzzles somehow last for 30 hours? That kind of thing. His last game was the very highly regarded Head, a game where you had a little dude who powered up every surface he touched and he could throw his head to power distant contraptions. Ed says you absolutely have to play it. Ooze mechanic revolves around the fact that you're a little bomb caterpillar thing and you can place your bombs and remotely detonate them to propel yourself around obstacles and blow shit up in creative ways, all while trying to explore the depths of a Metroid style map. There's a free demo on Steam right now that's worth checking out to get a sense of what this is all about. Ed tells me it's the kind of thing that definitely leaves you wanting more. This one comes out on August 8th for PC, and if you do like the look of it, we've left a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This on Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and over on the Epic Games Store, you probably still have time to grab adventure game Pilgrims, as well as a cyberpunk turn-based RPG called Keylocker, which also snuck in last week, but on Friday they're being replaced by 2 other games. One is Road Redemption, which is basically a spiritual successor to the motorbike combat game Road Rash. If you're old enough to remember that one, God bless. This one was pretty good and did quite well for the developer, who are now making that Kingmakers game, you know, the one with the trailer featuring the guy driving a pickup truck in medieval times and mowing down everyone with modern weaponry, the one that's being made into a movie based on the trailer alone. Anyway, motorbike combat, it's great. If high-speed thrills are a bit too much for you, then this other offering might be better. 112 Operator, which is an emergency simulator dispatch and has already done pretty well for itself over on Steam. Perfect way to add a little more stress to your life, just in case you need it. Xbox also announced their first wave of new inclusions for Game Pass in August, which includes the highly regarded indie game Rain World, which is kind of a difficult and moody game about a slug cat. Yeah, that's what it's called. This one came out in 2017 and got a huge DLC update in 2023 that was basically a sequel, worth checking out. The other big one is Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Mirage, which was their more focused AC game that got rid of the RPG stuff and went back to straight stealth. I didn't like that one at all, but hey, maybe you will, so you can try it out on Game Pass if you like. Third-person survival shooter Aliens Fireteam Elite is also dropping, which certainly isn't the worst game this series has gotten. In fact, it's kind of not bad at all. I liked it. And that's about it. A few more games are coming to standard tier like Citizen Sleeper 2, Lonely Mountains, MechWarrior 5 Clans, and Orcs Must Die Death Trap. We'll have to wait a couple more weeks to see what Microsoft has got in store for us. Our feel-good story for the week involves modders doing what modders do best, things that are probably going to get them a DMCA strike from Rockstar. A streamer and modder who goes by the handle Blurbs has a rich history of making mods that achieve new levels of immersion. A while back, he made one that allowed Twitch chat to voice NPCs in Skyrim. The results were just about what you'd expect.
Hey there, kid, you want some drugs?
Let's get ready for some immersion here.
What's up, dude? Nice.
Well, he's back at it this week with his most ambitious mod project yet, a Red Dead Redemption 2 mod that allows him to be in the game. I have absolutely no idea how he did this, but he somehow rigged it so that he's right there in the thick of it, and using a camera on a selfie stick, he's able to like free look around the environment. Best of all, it's not just visuals. He can actually be a dick to the poor NPCs who were just trying to enjoy a drink in peace.
I can tell him to go fuck himself.
Okay, that's another showdown for the week. I'm about to go play some Battlefield 6 since I got slight early access to it, and I won't lie, I am pretty pumped about it. Big week on the channel actually, got some embargoed impressions going up sometime soon, which I think you'll enjoy. I'll probably do something around Battlefield as well. Definitely want to take a look at Mafia the Old Country, and do be on the lookout for a Grounded 2 early access review from Austin. Spoiler alert, he really likes it. Lots happening on the website too, by the way. We just made a bunch of upgrades to it, including an RSS feed. So if you're of that vintage, as I am, and you like to get your news that way, then be sure to search for thisweekinvideogames.com in your reader of choice. We've also got a new columnist joining our ranks very soon. Someone I can't spoil yet, but I think you guys will really like him. All that and more over on thisweekinvideogames.com, so do go and check it out, but not before hitting the old like button on this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching. Oh, and before you go, have you ever heard of spatial screens? I hadn't until a few weeks ago, but since then, they've basically changed the way I watch TV or play my Steam Deck. Stick around to learn more about them right now. Recently, I did a shout out for this video's sponsor, XREAL. They just released their One Pro spatial screen glasses, and you guys responded very warmly to that shout out. So XREAL was like, let's do it again. And I was like, hell yeah. But then they said, how can we make it a bit different this time? How can we show this off in a way that people haven't seen before? And I was like, well, how about we just show it to some people who have never seen it before? So I took them with me when I visited the Back Pocket crew, very good friends of mine who run one of my favorite gaming podcasts. They had no idea what I was about to show them until I put them on Pete's face. He was pretty impressed.
Oh my god, I'm in the video game.
So, what is Pete seeing right now? Well, imagine being able to watch content on a 171-inch screen attached to your face. That is exactly what the XREAL One Pro simulate. They're glasses that deliver a spatial screen experience so that what you see is Pete wearing a pair of glasses, but what Pete sees is Animal Well on a massive screen.
Jeez, that's sharp, isn't it?
It is, really is.
And bright.
Yeah.
Gus is spot on. The XREAL One Pros are newly released and they're a big step up over the already industry-leading XREAL Ones. The Pros utilize Sony micro OLED panels to deliver a 57-degree field of view, 700 nits of brightness, great glare reduction, and sleeker, thinner optics than ever before. Their X1 spatial computing chip allows you to either float an image so that it stays in your field of view or anchor it in place. Plus, the optional XREAL Eye add-on allows for 6 degrees of freedom, meaning you can get up and walk away from an image that you've anchored in place, and when you come back, it'll be right where you left it. You can plug the XREAL One Pros into a majority of devices that support USB-C display out, but I personally use them most often with my Steam Deck. I actually really like to play my Steam Deck when I'm either laying down or in bed or on the couch, but having to hold it up all the time is not great since it's kind of heavy. Now, just like Peter's doing, I can plug my XREAL One Pro glasses into my Steam Deck. I can have it sitting in my lap while I lay back and play games on a simulated 171-inch screen. Until you experience this for yourself, you don't realize how good it is.
Whoa, this is so cool. Oh my god.
They have inbuilt speakers powered by Bose that deliver excellent sound quality and volume, and the adjustable arms and nose pads mean you'll always be able to find a comfortable fit. Whether it's consuming movies or TV shows on your devices, using it as a virtual monitor as you work, or as a way to deliver immersive and comfortable experiences when playing portable consoles, the XREAL One Pro really delivers. Don't take my word for it though, go and check out some reviews for this. Honestly, just do a quick Google, you will find tons of reviews, non-sponsored, from people who just love this thing. Like, it's really got a fantastic rap from tech reviewers, and it's really well deserved. As I said, I've been using it for the past month, absolutely loved it. It's changed the way I've consumed content and played my Steam Deck, and I have no plans to stop using it anytime soon. The XREAL 1 Pros are available at a variety of retailers, but right now they're running a special promotion for those in the US. If you buy from XREAL.com, you can trade in literally any other pair of glasses you own to get a discount on a pair of XREALs. Toy glasses, old Ray-Bans, prescription spectacles, even other XR glasses or VR headsets, everything you can trade in has a unique value, and the ranges from $75 up to $475 in trade-in value, and XREAL will give you cash back via a digital MasterCard, but only if you take them up on this offer before August 15th. That's XREAL.com to trade in literally any other pair of glasses you can rustle up, but do click the link below as that link has the tracking that helps you boy out. Thanks XREAL for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.